The hottest day that summer, my face was frying on the pavement of a nowhere Texas gas station while a county deputy leaned his weight into the back of my neck and told me I was trash. My cheek pressed so hard into the asphalt I could see little rainbows in the oil stains, people walking around us pretending not to stare, and all I could think was, here we go again. Different town, same script. I was in a thrift store dress that didn't quite fit shoes, with the soles peeling off my hair tangled on purpose. And if you had driven by, you would have seen just another tired black woman getting handled by the law. Nothing special, nothing worth slowing down for, right? What you would not have seen, at least not yet, was the badge tucked inside my bra that said Special Agent Jordan Price, FBI, or the transmitter sewn into the seam of my dress, or the 11 months I'd spent in that little town, letting people underestimate me on purpose, so I could see what its so-called protectors did when they thought no one important was watching. The deputy on my neck was Cole Mercer, big guy with a buzz cut who smelled like cheap coffee and power. He leaned down so close I could feel his breath on my ear and said, "Stay still, sweetheart. You don't want me to get rougher, like he was doing me a favor just by keeping me breathing," while his partner Ryan Tate stood over us with his hands hooked in his belt baton, swinging lazy, and muttered for the crowd, "Innocent people don't shake like that," as if fear itself was proof of guilt. I knew this routine by heart. I'd heard versions of it in every back room in Pine Ridge, that little dot on the map tucked off the highway. People telling me about traffic stops that turned into beatings resisting arrest, that looked a whole lot like punishment. Phones slapped out of hands, reports that somehow never made it past the front desk. You know what I mean? Everybody in town knew. Sheriff Dalton Crowe ran the place like his own ranch, but any time someone complained, the story died somewhere between the county station and the state computer. That is why I was there that day, lying in that parking lot in a dress that wasn't mine, letting Cole and Ryan circle me like I was prey, because this was the gas station that kept showing up in every whisper, the place where things got handled, and I needed to see how far they would go when they thought no one who mattered was looking. Cole yanked my bag off my shoulder so hard the strap burned. My skin dumped everything on the asphalt like it was garbage and kicked through it with his boot. Then announced to Ryan loud enough for everyone that he'd seen me pass something at Pump 6, called me a drug mule, and for a second I just watched how easily a few heads nodded along, how quickly people fell into that quiet belief that if the cops said it, it must be true. I stayed in character, eyes wide, hands shaking, because if I broke too early, I blew the whole mission. So while Cole shined a flashlight in my face in broad daylight and Ryan paced a little circle around my body, I was counting exits and cameras and how far I could let this play before it turned from theater into something I couldn't walk away from. It turned. The second Cole's open palm cracked across my face and bounced my teeth together, my ears ringing, my knees scraping the pavement. And for one flash of a moment, I wasn't an agent anymore. I was 15 again, getting shoved into a locker, while some kid told me I'd never be anything but trouble, and I realized I was done letting other people write my story for me. So I did the one thing they never expect from someone they think is powerless. I raised my voice. He hit a defenseless woman. I shouted not as a plea but as a statement for the record, and that one sentence cut through the hum of gas pumps and highway noise like a siren. The woman at the store door froze, a teenager at the far pump, lifted his phone higher. An older man turned just enough so his camera could see all three of us, and you could see something flicker in Cole's eyes when he realized his favorite little stage suddenly had an audience he didn't control. He tried to drag the story back, barking that I'd attacked first, that I was resisting, and he was just doing his job, you know, that tired line, and right then a skinny man I recognized from sleeping behind the laundromat. Eli stepped out from behind the ice machine with his hands shaking and yelled that Cole had done the same thing to him behind the bridge the week before. Face in the mud, laughter in his ear, and the whole lot exhaled like they'd been holding the truth in their lungs for years. Yeah, that happened. Ryan slammed Eli against a car and snapped cuffs on him fast, but by then half the people there had their cameras up, and that was my cue. My thumb found the tiny bump sewn into the hem of my dress and pressed the transmitter under my skin, woke up and started feeding 11 months of undercover work to a federal server miles away. All those whispered stories finally backed by audio and video instead of just pain. I felt the faint buzz in my palm, and this stubborn little smile pulled at my mouth before I could stop it. Cole saw it and hissed, "What the hell are you smiling at?" stepping toward me like he was about to stomp out a spark, and that was the exact moment I stopped pretending I couldn't fight back. I rolled off my shoulder, planted my heel, and drove my foot into his jaw. The crack echoed off the pumps, and that big man dropped like somebody had unplugged him flat on the same asphalt he'd been grinding my face into. Ryan's baton came down, but my hand was already on his wrist. Twist, pivot, knee to the gut, he folded and hit the ground, wheezing. And for the first time since I stepped out of that car, I stood up straight, dress ripped, cheek scraped, but my hands steady as I reached into my neckline, pulled out the badge on its chain, and flipped it open so every phone could see. Special Agent Jordan Price, FBI, I said, calm and clear, and you two just assaulted a federal officer on camera. The shock that rolled through that parking lot was almost loud. A gasp here, a whispered, "Oh my God, there." Ryan went pale. Cole's hand went to his own badge like it might suddenly shield him, and for one long breath I let myself believe the truth had finally outrun the lies. Then a black SUV rolled in with its lights off and windows dark, and the whole place went quiet in that way. Houses go quiet when the front door opens late at night because everyone in Pine Ridge knew that truck and the man who climbed out of it, Sheriff Dalton Crowe. He took one slow look at his deputies on the ground, and me standing over them with half the town filming and the corner of his mouth curved, like this was mildly amusing. "Agent Price," he said, "using my real name, like a joke, took you long enough to say hello, and right there between the ice chest and the lottery tickets. I understood he had known who I was for a while and still let his boys do what they did, which meant he trusted somebody above me to make the whole mess vanish later." A few hours later, I was standing under humming fluorescent lights instead of that brutal sun back in our regional office, dropping a year of work on a tech's desk and telling him to run it straight to DC priority while he yawned into his coffee and plugged in my drive. Both of us watching the progress bar climb those little green lines that are supposed to mean justice is on its way. Then the screen flashed red. No data found. He frowned, tried again, tapped a few keys. Another window popped up on its own big block letters. Unauthorized access detected, system locking. And I watched his face go from annoyed to scared in about 3 seconds. We pulled the access logs, and there it was in plain text. Someone with root access on a DC server had just ordered a full purge on the Pine Ridge case, not sealed for later, not reassigned, erased, like those people and their stories had never existed. Half an hour after that, my badge wouldn't open the front door. My supervisor, Tom Keene, met me outside with his tie loose and his eyes very interested in the cracks on the sidewalk, and he gave me the line every betrayed cop and agent hears. Sooner or later told me this came from higher than me, that I was off the case, that I should go home and let it go, that it was for my own good. And I laughed because if I didn't laugh, I might scream, and I asked him straight whose good we were really talking about, mine or Crowe's, and the way his jaw clenched was all the answer I needed. That was the twist I didn't see coming when I rolled into Pine Ridge pretending to be broke and lost. I expected dirty deputies and a bully with a badge. I did not expect my own side to quietly hit delete on the truth. The second it became inconvenient. You know what I mean? That hits different. It is one thing to go up against open corruption. It is another to realize the people who trained you are standing behind it holding the eraser. So I sat in my car in a strip mall parking lot with the engine off and the rain starting to tap on the windshield, hands on the wheel, staring at nothing, wondering if 11 months undercover had just turned into a ghost story. Only I would remember when my cheap little burner phone buzzed. Unknown number, blocked ID, a voice I recognized from the background of county meetings. Gabe Miller, the accountant, nobody ever really looked at, whispering like someone was already in the room with him. "Agent Price Crowe's going to burn his ledger tonight. If you ever want proof on paper, you've got one shot. Safe's behind the big painting in his office. Code starts with 3-1. That's all I caught. If he finds out I called you, I'm done." That ledger was the kind of thing you dream about in this job. Hard numbers, account names, dates, payouts, maybe even the person in my own building who had just erased my case. And if Crowe torched it all I had left were some shaky cell phone videos and my word against a sheriff with friends in high places, so yeah, I went back. After midnight headlights off, I slipped in through the freight entrance of the station, following the sharp stink of gasoline down the dark hallway to his office, a room that looked like a movie set for respectable public servant, with plaques on the wall and a flag in the corner, except for the sheen of fuel on the carpet and the metal lighter sitting on his desk. Behind the big painting, just like Gabe said, there was an old mechanical safe. I cracked it with a stethoscope, and pure stubbornness pulled out a heavy black book, flipped it just long enough to see what I already felt in my bones. Crowe wasn't some small-town crook. He was one node in a line that ran through 3 counties and into budgets with federal names on them, people who got paid to look the other way, people with exactly the kind of access it takes to erase a case from the inside. I barely had time to register that before I heard the slide of a shotgun behind me and his voice in the doorway, low and almost amused. Not very smart, Agent. The next minutes were smoke and heat and bad choices colliding him, waving that shotgun and calmly explaining how easy it would be to call me a rogue agent who snapped say I broke into his office and accidentally died in a fire, the gasoline on the floor already glistening, a wire popping in the ceiling, and a flame racing across the room like it had been waiting. My fingers locked around that ledger as the temperature spiked, glass cracking in the windows, an alarm screaming somewhere downstairs, and survival instinct finally shoved training aside. I dove under his desk, shot out the back window, dragged that book through broken glass, and tumbled into the alley, lungs burning, hair full of ash, the whole building behind me turning into a torch. I didn't even get a full breath in my chest before flashlights snapped on and a ring of rifles locked in Cole limping at the front, shouting that I had attacked the station and blown up government property, trying to turn survival into a crime while every lie he'd ever told was literally burning behind him. And for a second, I honestly thought that was how my story ended. One nervous trigger pull and the truth buried under a few quick lines in a county report. But the universe has timing sometimes almost cruel. Another engine roared in a black SUV with federal plates. This time, doors swinging open, and Agent Lauren Shaw from Internal Affairs stepped out with her badge held like a hammer, ordered every county weapon lowered, and had me shoved into the back seat of that truck before anybody had time to grow a new story. In the days that followed, we put Crow in cuffs, watched deputies decide in real time whether they were willing to go down with him, traced the money in that ledger to people with nicer offices than mine, and saw some of them frog-marched past the same cameras they used to smile for. And one morning I found myself in a briefing room staring at a map of the Southwest with 6 red dots glowing on it, Pine Ridge and 5 other towns just like it, while a commander told me I was now lead agent on a task force to dig the rest of this rot out. On paper, that's a win. The underdog agent from nowhere stands up, refuses to stay quiet, takes down a sheriff and a corrupt supervisor, and gets promoted, the kind of story people like to wrap in a neat little bow. But it doesn't feel like an ending to me. It feels like standing at the edge of a dark forest with one flashlight and realizing you've only lit up the first tree. Pine Ridge didn't magically heal because a few men went to jail. The people who filmed that gas station beatdown still have to live with what they saw. The kids there still flinch at sirens, and every blinking red dot on that map is full of families who have been told in 100 small ways, this is just how it is here. So when I sit here and talk into this mic, I'm not just telling you a wild FBI story. I'm asking you something real. If you were on that pavement with a knee in your back and the option to keep your head down, keep your job, let the powerful stay comfortable, or to push back, risk being erased, risk being called crazy or difficult or ungrateful for wanting the law to actually be the law for everyone, what would you honestly do? Do you think I pushed too far by going after the people above Crow who tried to delete my case should I have taken the transfer and forgotten the little town that wasn't worth the trouble? Or do you believe the only way anything ever changes is when somebody is stubborn enough to say, no, we're not done here, and keep going even when their own side turns on them? I really want to know, so hit like if you made it this far, subscribe if you want more stories that don't come with a neat bow on top, and tell me in the comments what you've seen where you live. The quiet injustices, the good officers, the bad ones, the moments someone stood up when everyone else stayed seated. Because if Pine Ridge taught me anything, it's that the line between power and abuse is drawn by regular people who either look away or decide they're done pretending they didn't see.